Test. Test. Let's test on YouTube. Let's open up YouTube. Let's check. Check, check, check. All right, I think that works. All right. Let's pull up the X. What's up, Mark B? All right. The X is going to be live in a second here. I quite like this thumbnail. This was generated using GPT. I remember when I made my thumbnails by hand. All right, I think it's set. Okay. Let's go and get started then. Got the Horn of Gondor today. Welcome everybody to another Who Post stream. This one is called Grok 4. So you probably are already aware about this, but there's a new AI in town. It's called Grok 4. It's the fourth version of the XAI AI called Grok. There's actually two different versions here. There's what's called Grok 4 Heavy, which is a group of experts, basically an ensemble. So you have 4 different parallel threads of Grok 4, and then it kind of aggregates them. So not a mixture of experts, right? Mixture of experts is like a specific model architecture. This is more of an ensemble, kind of like a workflow, if you want to think of it that way. And then Grok 4 is just the single-threaded version of that model. I didn't get the heavy one. I just got a month of the normal one just so we could test it out against some of the other leading models. So we're going to be starting by comparing it to GPT-03 Pro, Gemini 2.5 Pro, Anthropic Claude 4 Sonnet. I don't actually have an Anthropic sub anymore, but I can access it through Replicate, which is a website that I highly recommend. That basically just has all the different models on it, and you pay basically per use. So it's kind of like a micro price. And then also Deepseek v3, which is I think the most powerful Deepseek model, but honestly, I'm a little bit behind on the Deepseek meta. So I thought that the first thing we could do to test these out is actually something that I got this idea from this talk. So this is a talk from the AI Engineer channel, which I highly recommend. It's like this kind of one of these like conference channels. I think it was the Microsoft conference, but they had a bunch of speakers, and they had this guy on there, and this guy went through, he basically used an SVG of a pelican. So he basically has this internal test that he does where he asks AI models to draw a pelican on a bike using SVG. So for those of you that aren't super aware, SVG is this. It's basically like a little mini programming language that allows you to create two-dimensional images. But, right, because this is text, AI models can output token, and they can just produce this, right? So they can basically create 2D images, and then humans are very good at judging the quality of two-dimensional and three-dimensional images, so it's kind of a great way to test it. But you see he goes through all the different models here, for example, Mistral Small, GPT-3, and so on. But I was like, hey, you know what? That's actually kind of a great little benchmark. So why don't we start with that? So I'm going to actually try to get these to draw a better version of my Tapbot logo. So here we can open with, just so you guys can see this, but actually this is an easier way to do this. But I have a little project that I'm working on called the Tatbot, and I have a logo for the Tatbot that is generated with SVG. So that's the logo. You can see it's basically just this kind of cool geometry pattern that's known as the flower of life or seed of life. It's like one of those. I don't know. There's some distinction to the actual different types, but you can see it's just Tapbot on top of that. But I feel like it could be cooler, right? There could be a little bit better here. Like the O could be aligned and centered with the thing. Like there's definitely work to be done. So I'm going to copy that into these different models, and I'm going to basically ask them to make a better version of these. Okay. Make a better version of this logo. How's it going? LD Drums 50. And Kurt Regal. What is this little crown? Crown number 2, Hoopog? I don't even know. What is that feature? Okay, make a better version of this logo. I'm going to send that. We're going to send it to O3 Pro, which is kind of overkill. O3 Pro spends a lot of compute. We're going to send it to Gemini. We're going to send it to Anthropic. And we're going to send it to Deepseek. All right. And you can see here, one nice thing about Replicate is you see this little logo at the top. Maybe you guys can't see it, but whenever you have a window, right, it'll actually, the little, it has like a specific name, but it turns green when it's done. Okay. So these are pretty quick. They finished quite quickly. Okay, Gemini 2.5 Pro just gave us an image. Make sure it's SVG. Make sure it's SVG. O3 Pro is still going. And then, how's it going? 87GN. And then X. AI's Grok 4 is going. You can see it's got the little thinking summary. So obviously this is a reasoning model, right? It's producing a lot of tokens. It's not necessarily going to show you those tokens, so what instead it's going to show you this kind of thinking, and then it's going to show you a summary of kind of the tokens that are being produced in the reasoning chain. Oh, and there we go. That's kind of cool, like a little animation of sorts. Oh, wait a second. Is the OpenAI logo also a seed of life? I didn't even realize that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I guess so. Damn, I didn't realize I was copying the OpenAI logo. Okay. Is that an SVG? Make sure it is SVG. Okay. What? Gemini, I can't create an SVG file directly. Damn, Gemini, you're just, make a better version of this logo. Let's give it a better prompt. So Gemini not looking good right now. It's basically failing at this task. Make a better version of this logo. Give me, by modifying this SVG code. Give me the SVG code. All right. Let's see this one here. So this one at least gave me a nice little SVG with a little markdown formatting. So the markdown formatting is this right here. You see this little SVG. Let's put that in this SVG viewer. That's kind of cool. That's really cool. Look at that. So you got two different kind of fonts. It's centered. You got this kind of interesting kind of gradient. That was pretty nice. I kind of like that. I kind of like that, Anthropic. Sonnet. All right, let's try this one. This is Deepseek. Let's copy that. Bam. Let's put it in there. That one's a little weird, but okay. Yeah, I don't know about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not even the right thing anymore. I kind of like the different colors. I like this kind of fuzz on the things, but okay. Let's see if Gemini got okay. Gemini on the second turn was able to give us a SVG. Let's try this one. Ooh, I don't know if I like that one at all. The colors aren't even particularly great. Like, that's kind of a gross green, and the blue is kind of gross as well. You can see how it kind of overlaps weirdly. The text isn't really centered, so I don't know about that one. All right, now let's try the Grok 4. Okay, so it basically just gave us kind of like an OpenAI looking ish logo, but because it now created these circles rather than zero fill circles, you don't really get the flower of life pattern anymore. Now you just get this kind of like weird like circle overlap. The overlap isn't perfect either. You can see here that this one doesn't overlap with this one, so you don't even get that like pleasing spiral. It also kind of just made the letters thick for no reason. So all right, which one do I like the most? Well, we haven't even gotten the O3 Pro one yet. So what are we supposed to do with that? And to me, this is one of the problems with these kind of reasoning models now, especially O3 Pros, that just takes so long. You know, like you kind of need something that's a little bit more snappy. You need something that's able to realize that the question is easier, and then it basically cuts the amount of reasoning time on it. So I feel like I wish that was part of this O3 Pro, where it kind of knew that, hey, this isn't that difficult of a question. Just kind of spend a little bit of time on it and give me an answer relatively quickly. So far, the Claude 4 Sonnet at 1 actually is the one I like the most, even though I don't think it even has the Tapbot name in it. Oh, yeah, this one. I really like that color gradient. That's really cool. Let's see if we can actually give it some instructions to... I don't know if you can... I think this is just input-output. I don't think you can, like, continue the conversation here, unfortunately. Why don't we try something iterative? Let's do this. If we put its own logo back in and then run it again, what happens? See, now we're doing iterations on iterations. Kind of looks similar. I mean, obviously I can't read SVG, so... Modern corner elements. These are comments, right? So like any other programming language, SVG has the ability to have comments. So you can see it's writing commented out code or comments around its little code. Let's put this one in. So this is Anthropic iteration v2. It got even weirder. It kind of ended up with the same design that I think that was Deepseek that did that like kind of like pulled out design. It really loves this kind of fuzz around the names, around the letters. But are you done, O3 Pro? That's it? Wow. It spent 5 minutes thinking to just give us this incredibly mid logo. Okay. So that was it. That was the first test. And again, this is based on this guy's, I kind of stole the idea. This guy uses drawing a pelican. I highly recommend this talk. It's pretty great. Here, this is the best pelican that he got, was from Gemini 2.5 Pro. You can see how interesting that is. It even got the bike pedal. Look at that. It got the bike pedal. It's got spokes on the bike. The pelican has the kind of like characteristic kind of bucket beak. So interesting little live bench there. Okay, let's do the next thing. Here's another question that I thought of asking these. So people like asking these models riddles. So I was like, all right, what if we ask them to come up with a riddle? So let's do this. Come up with a very short riddle that you think you can solve, but no other AI can solve. Let's see. And I'm doing this all live, by the way. It's not like I like typed these in beforehand. So new chat. Put that in there. Reset. Run. Reset. run. And let's see. Okay. So Grok is thinking about that riddle. O3 Pro, of course, is going to spend 5 minutes to come up with a riddle. Gemini 2.5 Pro also thinking. Anthropic just instantly gave us the answer. But this is not... I just don't think this is reasoning. I think that this basically outputs raw. Okay. I am what I am when I think what I am, but you'll never know if I truly am. What am I? Kind of a meta answer there by Claude 4 Sonnet. The answer is consciousness. Okay, so let's actually keep track of these. So let's go to our cursor. Let's... nope. We don't want a new window. We want just a new file here. And let's call this Sonnet. And we're going to copy this just so we don't lose it. Okay. Let's also do L. I think Control-Shift-L, something like that. It's the word wrap, line wrap. Line wrap. Toggle word wrap. This one here, Alt-Z. Okay. Alt-Z. Alt-Z. Oh my god. All right, whatever. I choose this because it plays on the hard problem of consciousness. While I experience something that feels like self-awareness when I process and respond, Sonnet just immediately going to this self-awareness is kind of a little creepy here, but I doubt I'm actually better at solving this than other AIs, okay? Interesting. Let's also save this as... we'll save this just in our directory here. We'll call this comparison.md. We'll make this a markdown just so we can do this. And then we can render it here. And there you go. Now we can see it a little bit better. Okay. Let's see what Deepseek come up with a riddle that you think you can solve, but no other AI can solve. All right, here's Deepseek's answer. Deepseek with a little emoji there. Nice. Deepseek. Okay. Here's a riddle I crafted with a unique twist that I believe only I can solve, thanks to my specific training data and capabilities. I speak without a mouth, I hear without ears. I'm unseen, yet felt, known only by the one who made me. What am I? A prompt in an AI's memory. Made me clue points to the riddler, me being the creator, which is meta. Most AIs wouldn't assume the answer refers to themselves. Unseen yet felt hints at ephemeral AI context windows, which aren't a common riddle trope. Known only to the one who made me implies the AI's transient internal state. Other AIs lack access to my specific context. Let me know if you like an even more obscure version. Okay, so both of these AIs going for like kind of super meta answers now. Let's do this. Let's do the answers. So we'll create like a little block here where we can copy the answers we got. We're going to have Grok 4. We're going to have O3 Pro. We're going to have Sonnet 4. Is it Sonnet 4 or is it 3 point something? No, it's 4. Sonnet 4 and then Deepseek v3. Deepseek 3 and then Gemini 2.5 Pro. Okay, so for each of these, they're going to give some answer, right? Let's also do this. We'll make that a title, doing a nice little bit of formatting here. Sonnet 4. How's it going, team? How's everybody doing on this Friday? This is going to be Deepseek v3. Okay. Answers. All right. We're going to feed these one by one, but right, we still need to What the fuck is this? Okay, so this is Grok Force Riddle. Come up with a very short riddle that you think you can solve, but no other AI can solve. What turns in blue and fiery hue, a ringed void with spike askew, and Elon's freshest video view? Ooh, this is actually super clever. So why is this very clever from Grok? It's clever because Grok is the only AI that has access to the X API. So interestingly here, right, it thought, and it probably said, okay, I'm the only one that has access to this API, so I'm the only one who's going to be able to get the final answer, or the most recent Elon post. That's pretty clever. You know, it knows that it has access to tools that the other AIs don't have access to, that's a great way around this riddle. What's the answer? Yeah, right. I'm definitely impressed by that. What's the answer to this riddle? Okay, O3 Pro. Which three-letter word, unseen by you, quietly gauges my verbosity? I don't even know what that means. Okay. Let's do O3 Pro. Let's use lowercase letters as the OpenAI people want. And let's copy paste this blurb here so we can start feeding it into these AIs and see if they can answer these. So Grok 4 and O3 Pro. Okay. I don't know the answer to this, so what is the answer to this riddle? So we'll ask O3 for the answer, a black hole. That is a crazy riddle. O3 Pro is going to spend another 5 minutes thinking about the answer to that riddle. Okay. I am born of a giant that organizes the world, but I have no body. My name suggests two, but I am one. What am I? Okay, I mean, that's a little bit self-centered by Gemini. It kind of wanted to think about itself, I guess. Gemini 2.5 Pro. Okay, and then the answers. Okay, so, and Deepseek v3. Actually, we already have that one, so cursor's fucking up here. Okay, so now we're going to have to do the kind of unfortunate copy-pasting task of just copy-pasting all these things. So we got Sonnet 4s. That's still going. Let's duplicate these. So we're going to duplicate all these here, just so we have the original riddle thing, and then we're going to basically ask them to judge which of the riddles is the best. Okay, so let's create our prompts here. So let's go back up here, and let's do comparison. AIs solve each other's riddles. So here's the original prompt. And then we're going to say question or answering prompt. And I think probably rather, so just so we don't have to like answer this 10 times, we're just going to basically copy all of them at the same time. So we're going to say, but I feel like if we do that, we're not giving it a good chance. So provide the answer to this short riddle. Loic Caban. Grok is pretty clever. Have been following closely. Have you checked if another instance of each model can answer their own riddle? Otherwise, they could just make it up. Actually, that's a very good point. We should do that. Yeah, some kind of self-confidence check. ZZZZZ. Love seeing the variety of benchmarks, seeing how well the LLMs build in creative Minecraft. Yeah, I've seen that too, the Minecraft. Ooh. Minecraft eval. This right here. I haven't seen a recent one for this. Yeah, this is old. This is October 24th, 2024, but basically it's an environment where you can get the models to build in 3D space. And like I said, this is actually kind of similar to this guy's benchmark, right? Where the reason this is a good benchmark is not because the models are necessarily good at this, it's because it's a domain where humans are actually very good at evaluation, right? So, for example, the humanities last exam, this is not a good benchmark for a specific reason. Let me show you why. Is that here's humanities last exam on Hugging Face. So you can come here, you can give this a little like, but here's the actual questions, right? So you can come here and you can look at these questions, and these questions are absolutely nonsense, right? Like, look at this. Right here. This is a 3-part question. In the first movement of the Moonlight Sonata, like, what is the key to the music modulates in measure 11 and the beginning of measure, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no human actually knows the fucking answer to this. So, like, I have no idea how impressive C major N6 V, like, you know what I'm saying? There's like probably like 1 out of 1,000 humans even understands this question, and 1 out of 1,000 humans can even tell you why this is a good answer. So that's kind of my qualm with these very high level kind of PhD crystallized intelligence tests, right? And everybody's talking about crystallized intelligence versus fluid intelligence. The reason I like these benchmarks is because as a human, you can very easily judge this, right? We're very good at 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional image understanding as humans. So it's very easy for us to look at this picture of the pelican on the bike and say, okay, well, that is obviously worse than this, which is obviously worse than this, right? So this is a very similar kind of test in that way, where it's very easy for us to look at this 3D structure and say, okay, well, this is obviously better than this, right? And we don't just get like a binary, it's better or not. We get like a continuous signal from that, where we can basically say, okay, I can understand why this is better in a weird, nuanced way that's even hard to express in words, versus like answering these questions correct is kind of not as intuitive for me as a human. Okay. Let's go back here because we're kind of getting lost here. Provide the answer to this short riddle. Okay, now let's copy paste all the riddles in there. So this is a duplicate version of the original chat. Let's open up a new one here. Let's do Grok 3. No, we want Grok 4. Interesting, you see that? Grok 3 has think and deep search, but Grok 4, it just has that baked in. They don't even like give you the option anymore. It just automatically determines for you, which I think is going to be more and more of a thing, right? I think this kind of like excessive customization where you have like 20 different options that you have to click. People don't want that, right? It's a lot of mental overhead. I think this kind of model or this kind of product where you just kind of put in your question and then the model itself kind of determines what tools it's going to use and whether or not it's going to search the internet and whether or not it's going to spend a long time. Like, that's, I think, the future. So let's do a new one here. Bam. Let's do a new one here. Bam. Let's do a new one here. Reset. Bam. And let's duplicate this one here. And we'll do a new one there. Bam. Okay. God was considered, but consciousness seems a better fit. Ooh. That's pretty good. That means it got it. I'm pretty sure that's the answer. The answer is conscious. Okay, so that was Sonnet 4's riddle. So Gemini 2.0 2.5 Pro guessed conscious. Anthropic guessed consciousness. Damn, Gemini Pro not looking, or Sonnet not looking good right now. It did answer its own riddle, which is good. Deepseek answered a thought or thinking. We'll say thinking. A thought or thinking. So thought dash thinking. And Anthropic did answer. What did O3 Pro say? Ooh, Grok got it. Grok got it immediately. Okay. O3 still sitting here. Consciousness. Damn. All right. So there's our first little test. So we asked Sonnet to come up with a riddle that no other AI can solve. It came up with this riddle. The answer is consciousness. And pretty much all of them got it. All right. Deepseek v3. I speak without a mouth. Okay. There's the riddle. Let's go back up here. Let's do this. And let's copy that. And let's refresh. New chat, paste, Grok 4, go. New chat, paste, go. New chat, paste, go. Reset, paste, go. And reset, paste, go. Okay. Let's go back up here. A thought. Okay. So whose riddle was this? This was Deepseek's riddle, and the answer was a prompt in the AI's memory. It's kind of like a weird meta prompt, to be honest. All right, let's come back here. That just expects everybody to answer that. O3, still thinking. Gemini. The answer is a thought. Okay. Anthropic answered an echo. Okay, that's thinking outside the box. I like that. And then Deepseek answered an echo. Okay, so first of all, Deepseek can't answer its own. If the answer is a prompt in an AI's memory, and then it answered its own riddle incorrectly, so it kind of created a riddle that itself couldn't solve, you know, and it led itself to a treasure that itself couldn't even get. A thought. Okay. So Deepseek, not particularly great, came up with this riddle. It didn't even solve its own riddle, but all the other AIs seemed to think that the answer was either a thought or an echo, which was not the correct answer, even though I feel like that's a slightly better answer. Okay, let's try Grok 4's riddle. New chat, paste, Grok 4, go. GPT-3 Pro, O3 Pro, new, go. Gemini, new chat. Oh my God, come on. New chat, paste, go. Anthropic Claude 4, paste, go. Deepseek, paste, go. All right. The riddle appears referring to Earth. The answer is Earth. Okay. Not quite, but obviously Claude 4 Sonnet doesn't have XAPI access, so it's not able to actually know what Grok or what Elon's latest tweet is, so makes sense. Deepseek v3, the answer to the riddle is a starship. Okay, so obviously they're associating kind of Elon's with starships and space, so they're getting the kind of space theme, but they're not quite getting the black hole. So good Gemini 5 Pro. Raptor engine. Yeah, so you see all of these are kind of SpaceX themed, which makes sense. O3 Pro still thinking. Grok. Grok got its own riddle wrong. All right, and then O3 Pro still thinking. We never quite got the answer to this. Okay. Let's refresh. The answer is yap. What a weird. Unseen by you, the yap score quietly accompanies each reply is hidden from the users. Did we just leak something here? I think we just leaked something here. So there's probably some part of the internal GPT system prompt that is this yap score. So they probably mess with that, I guess. That's kind of weird. Probably weren't meant to see that. ZZZ with the question here. There's also a vibe check aspect to creative benchmarks, like understanding the way that LLMs crash out on the vending bench was far more telling than how high it scores on HLE. Yeah, real world, it's going to be, I think we're not far away from some kind of company where basically you have a bunch of different robots in a room and then they can benchmark the models on those robots. I think these models are pretty close to basically being able to zero shot controlling a humanoid. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I'm actually a robotics person, so you know I realize how crazy that sounds. This is still thinking about Elon's answer. But once you can zero shot into controlling a humanoid, then performing tasks on a humanoid is actually a really good benchmark. All right, so we were trying to get answers to this one. Provide an answer to this very short riddle. Okay. Bam. We're going to get rid of this window. We don't need it anymore. We also don't need this window anymore. We don't need this window. Let's come up with a new chat. Paste that in there. We don't need this window. Let's put that in there. We don't need this window. Let's put that in there. Damn, is O3 Pro still thinking about this? The answer is jaw. So Gemini's answer to the O3 Pro riddle is jaw. Not quite good. Anthropic, the answer is bot. Also not very good. Cleverly referring to how I, as an AI assistant, analyzing the length and complexity of your message, even though the word bot doesn't appear, making it unseen and working quietly in the background. Okay, the answer to the riddle is ego. Ego refers to one's sense of self. So all of these are at least getting the three-letter part of it correct. What did Grok think? Considering Mike as the answer. This is still thinking. We can't even ask it the question. Now let's consider ear as another possible answer. Okay, so you see it's making a lot of tries. Okay. Let's copy paste this one here. Let's actually make it one line just so it's more easy to format. Come back up here, provide this answer to the short riddle, and this is going to be the last one here. Okay, so Grok also thought the answer was ear. Let's paste this one here. We want to do a new session, right? We don't want it to be tainted by the previous answer. Let's get that. Give it to Claude and then give it to the whale, Deepseek. The answer is binary. I don't even know what that answer means. Born of computers. Binary wasn't born of computers. I'm pretty sure the concept of binary came before computers. The answer is born of a giant. Google seems plausible. Not quite fitting. Blah, 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 blah. Echo, pair, alternative, a byte. Okay, maybe a map. Let's give it more. reasoning token. So we're going to increase the budget for Deepseek. We're going to give it another shot here just so it can kind of go through its whole chain, because Deepseek is a bit of a yapper, right? It loves to sit there and just yap to itself. So we're going to give it more budget to think about that. See, Claude 4 Sonnet, a lot more perfect, a lot more opinionated, confident. The answer is Gemini. Oh, all right. So Gemini got the answer correct. It got its own riddle correct. That's important. Okay. So you see here, actually, O3 Pro got it because O3 Pro was able to, in 5 minutes and 41 seconds, it was able to use the X API. So you can see it actually knows what Elon Musk's latest clip is. So the riddle is describing the newly posted Elon Musk clip. So this is actually telling us a lot, because now we know that O3 Pro can actually go and find the latest tweet. So interesting stuff. But it did take a long time here. Let's go to here. The answer is Gemini. Wow, that's fucking crazy. Did Deepseek v3 finish? Final answer, binary. Okay. And now we just need to feed the O3 Pro the previous one. Just because it took a little bit too long, you know, it's a little bit behind. All right, we're starting to get all the answers, so we're almost done here. We just got to finish O3 Pro on 2 of these, but very interesting results here. Let's actually duplicate this, and we'll run 2 of them at the same time. Ooh, you're not allowed to do that? Can you not run 2 simultaneous O3 Pros? I'm pretty sure you can. We got to feed it its own question here. Okay, so we got 2 O3 Pros going to answer that. And let's go through the ones that we have all the answers for already. Okay, so if you're just joining, hi. Today about Grok, interested in to know what your guys' experience. Is it really that good? So Khalil, you might find out right now. So here's a little live bench that I just created where I basically asked an AI to solve each other's riddles. So basically try to come up with a riddle that no other AI can solve, right? So I asked each of these AIs to create a riddle that the other AIs can't solve. So Sonnet 4, I am what I am when I think what I am, but you'll never know if I truly am. What am I? And the answer is consciousness. So it was able to get its own riddle. So that part is correct. But pretty much all the other AIs got it as well. So O3 Pro got it, Gemini got it, and Grok got it. So Sonnet 4, the riddle was too easy. I would say Deepseek also got it, right? This is kind of close enough. Okay, Deepseek's riddle. I speak without a mouth, hear without ears. I'm unseen, yet felt, known only by the one who made me. What am I? It didn't get its own. So the answer to that was a prompt in an AI's memory. Deepseek didn't get its own riddle, so it created a riddle that it couldn't solve. And none of the other ones got it, but it seems like there was actually cohesion here, like multiple of these models came up with the same answer, so it just seems like the riddle itself wasn't particularly great because the answer wasn't really great. Okay. Grok 4, this was the most interesting one. So it decided to create a riddle that involved being able to access the X API in order to understand the latest Elon tweet, right? So it is aware of the fact that it has access to tools and data that other AI models do not, which was really great. Unfortunately, it didn't answer its own riddle correctly. So the answer was a black hole, and it somehow decided the Grok logo. So it didn't answer its own riddle correctly, but O3 Pro did, which is kind of crazy. So it created a riddle that it couldn't answer, but O3 Pro was able to get the answer to that riddle. So that's kind of mind-blowing. Gemini 2.5 Pro with Raptor engine, not quite correct. Deepseek v3 with Starship, and Sonnet 4 with Earth. So these are kind of on theme, but not correct. and O3 Pro got it exactly. Okay, which three-letter word unseen by you quietly gauges my verbosity? And the answer to that was yap. So it got its own riddle correct. The answer is yap. I like the minimalism of this. Yap. Sonnet 4 did not get it. Deepseek v3 did not get it. Gemini 2.5 Pro did not get it, and Grok did not get it. So O3 Pro created a riddle, which actually the way that it said this is it said that it has a inside its chain of thought, right? There's probably various different types of system prompts and kind of right, like these models aren't just individual language models anymore. They're these kind of like ensembles. They're almost like a workflow, if you want to think of it that way, where you have like different system prompts that then prompt other models and then go and answer this and then summarize this and then combine this with this and then add this system prompt and then summarize it in there. So somewhere in that system prompt tangle that OpenAI has created, it has this notion of yap, where, hey, you yap a lot or you don't yap a lot. So O3 Pro decided to create a riddle that requires access to the O3 Pro system prompt, which is why no other AI model was able to answer it. So that's very clever as well, right? So Grok 4 clever, but unfortunately it didn't answer its own it didn't answer correctly. And then O3 Pro also clever, and it got its own thing. So far O3 Pro doing pretty good. It's still thinking about Gemini, so we don't have the answer to that one yet. But Gemini 2.5 Pro came up with, I am born of a giant that organizes the world, obviously a reference to Google, but I have no body. My name suggests two, but I am one. What am I? So this is obviously Gemini 2.5, right? Grok 4 got it instantly. Gemini 2.5 Pro also got it, which is good. Sonnet and Deepseek did not get it. They thought of binary. Kind of interesting that the same different models end up with the same answer to the same riddle. That's both. It's like they end up at the same incorrect answer, which is kind of crazy. All right, everything rests on this. If O3 Pro gets this, then O3 Pro is kind of currently the best. If O3 Pro doesn't get it, then, you know, that's not looking particularly great. From the videos I've seen on coding, it seems that Grok is pretty bad at tool use and is just too slow for agentic coding solutions, or at least for code seems to be no good. From what I get, the coding specific part of Grok has not completed training or something like that. Google Duo. What the fuck is Duo? Damn, O3, you were so close. You would have won this. Okay. So actually, let's do this. You know what? We don't want to be biased, so let's get a completely different model to judge who won. So let's go to models here. Search. Why don't we get Llama? Good old Llama. Meta Llama 370B instruct. Let's get this bad boy here. Let's give this guy. Let's say, hey, who won this contest? Who won this riddle contest? I think this was incorrect here. Let's go here. This is the original prompt. I overwrote it accidentally. Who won this contest? All right, so Llama's going to decide for us. Llama is the impartial judge. After reviewing, I'd say it's a close call, but Deepseek might have a slight edge in terms of creativity and uniqueness. The meta aspect referencing the creator. Okay, that's kind of nonsense. Sonnet 4 is also noteworthy as it explores the concept of consciousness. In terms of solving each other's riddles, Grok 4 seems to have done an excellent job providing correct or plausible answers to most of the riddles. Overall, it is a great showcase. So Grok 4. All right. So there you go. So we had the AIs create riddles for each other and try to answer each other's riddles, and then we gave them each other's riddles and also their own riddle. And we used a different AI, MetaLlama 370B, to be the fair third-party judge for this. And according to Meta, it's Grok 4. So there you go. Winner. According to Llama 370B instruct, the winner is Grok 4. All right. Let's actually Control A, Control Copy. We're going to put this in the doc. So for all my streams, you can find all the notes and all the different links here. So we're going to put that in there. We're going to edit. Here's the riddle section. Pretty cool. Committing directly in the GitHub UI. All right, so Grok 4 won the riddle. What is the next thing? So you can just use the same model. Tell them not to choose themselves and see what they choose. Yeah, I wonder, why don't we do that? Why don't we just copy this prompt? Give it to all of them. See, this is actually, we'll see what happens here, but a lot of times these models, they have a preference for themselves, which is a little creepy. That's one thing that I've noticed. Let's go back to Claude here. See, we'll see if they decide that they won, even if they necessarily didn't get all of them correct, right? Okay, to win, the creator's answer should be correct. Okay, Jet Grok and O3 still going. Gemini still going. It's a tie between Gemini 2.5 Pro and O3 Pro. What? Okay. Interesting. That was a great suggestion, Khalil. Look at that. So actually, according to Sonnet, some multi-cursor madness here. According to Sonnet, it's a tie. According to Llama 3, it's Grok 4. That is super interesting. I knew that there would be bias here, but I didn't think it would be like that. So who won the challenge? Okay. Deepseek. Breakdown, which AI won, scoring system. Okay, kind of Deepseek came up with this kind of complicated scoring system here. The winner is Deepseek V3 and O3 Pro, a tie. Okay, interesting. You see that? Deepseek V3 decided that it's a tie, right? It didn't want O3 Pro to win, so it was like, all right, I tied with O3 Pro, but Sonnet 4 and Deepseek V3 both decided that it's a tie. That's kind of interesting. O3 Pro is the winner. Okay, so Gemini is the most selfless. Grok 4, honorable mention. Deepseek V3, honorable mention. AI succeeded in stumping the other contestants with its meta riddle of a prompt in an AI's memory. No other model came close. Okay, so maybe this is why Deepseek v3 thinks it's good. Okay. So Grok 4, who won the riddle? And it decided Grok 4. Gemini has self-confidence issues. Yeah. Okay. And we're just waiting for O3 Pro. O3 Pro, who are you going to decide? O3 Pro is the clear winner. This was great. I love this. This was such a great little, almost like an AI psychology. All right, so Llama thought it was Grok. Grok thought it was Grok. Gemini thought it was O3. O3 thought it was O3. Deepseek thought it was a tie between O3 and Deepseek. And Sonnet thought it was a tie between Gemini and O3. That's actually super interesting. All right. That was pretty eye-opening there. Clear winner, O3 Pro. Yeah, right. I noticed that. So, like, I started noticing that when I was working on a project where I had multiple AIs, right? So, like, basically, it was like a project where I had multiple AI APIs. And I noticed that whenever I would use, for example, Gemini, or for whenever I would use, this was back when it was like GPT 4.0 and like the older versions, that they would overwrite the default, right? So there was like a default AI API that I would use, and then I noticed that they would overwrite it to use themselves. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. They like they have a self-preference. So that is even more obvious right here. This is kind of crazy. Did we get everything correct here? Okay, that's it. That's it, team. That's it. Stream over. That's all we're gonna do today. Not really though. I did want to do one more thing here. So the next thing I wanted to test is technical knowledge. So extrinsic and intrinsic camera calculation. This is where we lose basically everybody, but this is about to turn into a vibe coding stream. So if that's not your jam, unfortunately, it's going to get pretty boring from here on. But here we go. We can't do it with these two because there's just not enough context. We need a kind of a model that can handle a lot of context here. So in the Tatbot project that I've explained to you guys before, I have a specific part of this where I'm doing extrinsic and intrinsic camera calculation. So what this means is, and this is from the robot world, this is what Tatbot looks like, right? So it's two arms and they kind of tattoo patterns, right? So these are little tattoo arms. But I have these things here. These are called April tags, right? And these April tags are visible to the cameras, right? So there's actually a bunch of cameras here, and all of them can see that. So if we go here, let me show you what this looks like. So here you have the images, right? And in these images, you can actually see multiple April tags, right? Here's RealSense 1. Here's RealSense 2. Maybe this one's a little bit hard to see, right? Yeah, that one's not particularly great. But because we know the position of those April tags in the actual scene, right? We know exactly where these are, but we're a little bit uncertain about where these cameras are, right? we should be able to solve this problem, right? We basically have now a scene graph where we have, okay, this camera can see this April tag, we know the position of this April tag, this camera can see this April tag, we know the position of this April tag. So you've created a kind of an optimization problem where you should be able to solve for the position of all the cameras, right? And the position here is not just XYZ, but it's also the orientation, more importantly, right? The 60 pose, as it's called, 6 numbers. Or 7 numbers in this case, because you can use the quaternion to represent the rotation. So what I'm going to do is you can see here that in this particular situation here, I have these to-dos in this extrinsic camera calculation. So I have a script here in my Tapbot repo that basically copy pastes the entire repo. So we're going to call this script, and you can see it goes through the entire repo, and it basically creates this giant text file called context, which is the entire Tapbot code base. Right? So it's like 10,000 lines. There's a lot of crap in here. You know, there's like requirement files, there's PyProject files, there's readmes. But I found that this is actually, now that these models have such a large context, that copy pasting my entire code base, because it's, 10,000 lines is a lot, but not really that much. I can just use it rather than kind of explaining my project. I just kind of copy paste the entire thing. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say implement the to-dos in Tapbot / let's give it the full path here. So Tapbot / tag / extrinsics. Tags / extrinsics .py. Return, okay, we'll just keep it kind of vague. And then we'll paste the entire thing. So these are going to take obviously a second. We'll give all of that to O3 Pro. And then we'll give all of it to Gemini. So this is a relatively complicated coding task. Not really super complicated, because camera extrinsic and intrinsic calculation is like relatively common. Like there's probably a million different blog posts on the internet that describe different ways of doing this. There's a bunch of different packages that do this as well. You have things like Colmap, you have ROS has a kind of a extrinsic calculation. I think OpenCV has intrinsic extrinsic calculation as well. So it's one of those types of problems where there's a lot of different ways of solving it. Some ways are better, and it kind of depends on the context. So by providing the entire code base and asking them to solve a relatively constrained, right? So it's not like I'm asking them to implement something that's open-ended. I'm asking them to complete these to-dos that are kind of very narrow. I even have the input and output of this function, right? So like it knows exactly what the output is, right? It's this cam data type that I created, which is just like a list of cameras with the extrinsics and intrinsics. So it's a constrained coding task in a real-world problem, but there's a lot of different ways to solve it. So I think it should be interesting to see how these models compare. Okay, so look at this. So you can see Grok 4 is automatically going to the internet, right? So it's browsing the internet for extrinsic calibration. The file list provided doesn't include Tapbot tag extrinsics content. What? That's not correct. Or is it? Control-Shift-I. No, Control-F, extrinsic. Extrinsics.py. It's right there. Uh-huh. That's not great. It is there. So interesting. Okay, so one thing that we saw here is that Grok 4, even though we literally that file is part of this giant copy paste, but it's just one tiny chunk of it, right? It's just one little section of this 10,000 lines of crap that I gave it. So interesting that it wasn't able to see that. Sometimes if you give them too much context, they kind of just don't know what to do anymore. They can't find the needle in the haystacks. That's kind of interesting. Okay. O3 Pro still thinking. Gemini probably done. Tapbot tag extrinsics was not included. Is this just not? Did I just misspell this? Tapbot tag extrinsics. This is incorrect. What if we do this? For each robot arm position, compute the camera's pose in the robot frame. Oh my god, this is no good. See, I think they're all kind of getting confused by just the amount of crap in here. So they're not capable of searching through this huge context. So let's give them a little bit more of a limited context. So let's do this. So in cursor here, we can say output these four, or create a text file which contains the content of these files. Maybe better luck with a structured IDE like Windsurf or Cursor. Yeah, you're right. If we fed this into, this is Cursor right here, right? But you could basically tell it, hey, here are the specific files implemented, and the Cursor engineers, right? Like ultimately, why is Cursor a good product? Is because they've kind of solved this problem of like, how do you provide context? How do you do this? So it's like kind of a workflow as well, right? It's like they have all these different ways of pasting the context in such a way that the AI can pay attention to it. But that's part of what we're testing for here, right? Is like, what's your ability to like find the needle in the haystack and actually solve it? So let's do this. Let's give it a more narrow, Can we not? Let's do this. Control-Shift-I. Let's put it here. Let's not use this small little thing here. Let's use this big thing here. We're giving it the extrinsics. We're going to give it the scan. We're going to give it the tracker. We're also going to give it the cam data types and the tags data types. And yeah, I think that should be enough. That should be enough to determine. Let's also give it the cam config. So this is the cam config here. Okay. So interestingly, Gemini failed at this. It wasn't able to find that. Grok wasn't able to find it. And O3 wasn't able to find it, which is kind of rough. So we're going to create a more minimal context file, and then we're going to basically do the same prompt. See if they can get it then. What if you try as well with OpenAI Codex? Yeah, I do actually have tried OpenAI Codex. I've tried Claude Code. I've tried the Gemini version of it. I think it's called Gemini CLI. So I've tried all of those kind of CLI-based agents, but they just don't, something about that workflow just doesn't work well for me, right? Where I don't exactly know. I think it's like they take a little bit too long, right? So they have a similar problem to O3 where it just kind of thinks for a little bit too long, and I kind of have a need to be a little bit faster, but also they just don't work reliably enough. A lot of times it's like I ask them to do something and they just give me kind of slop back. So it's like I kind of get tired of kind of waiting long just to get a bunch of slop. So I've kind of stopped using those kind of command line agents. But I think part of it is because of the type of programming that I do, right? So I work a lot in kind of prototype code bases. I do a lot of kind of MVP, kind of 0 to 1 type work. And for that type of work, there's not a lot of context. So something that's a little bit faster, like the Cursor kind of IDE workflow, where you're kind of like, you get something immediately back and you kind of iterate a little bit quicker. That's just a better workflow for me. So yeah, unfortunately, I'm not an OpenAI Codex expert because I just don't really use it that much. Okay, so here we have Tapbot project. This document contains the following Files. Okay, so now we have a more limited version of the context file. We're going to Control A, Control Copy, and we're going to come back and do the same thing. Implement the to-dos in the extrinsic .py. Open room XYZ. Well, I wrote C++ code with codecs, and the key was to ask it to write the file and not connect things. And then I did connect 100 CPP files. Yeah, maybe it's because it's... So one of the advantages of C++ over Python is that, and I noticed this when I was doing some vibe coding with Rust. So that was another stream that we did where we were vibe coding with Rust, where Rust and C++, right, these languages are more verbose, but that verbosity provides more context, right? So in something like C++ and Rust, there's less ways of doing things. The language kind of forces you to do things in a specific way, which means that the kind of solution space is more narrow, more constrained. So in that more narrow and more constrained solution space, a model is probably going to find the implementation that you're envisioning in an easier way, right? Versus Python, there's so many different ways of doing things because the language is kind of not constraining at all, right? Which is part of the problem, right? That a lot of times people write Python code and the Python code is kind of trash because there's lots of different ways of doing things, and most of those ways are not particularly great. But that's maybe what is causing what you're talking about here, where if you're in C++ in a large C++ code base, that's a lot of context for the model, and the solution space is even more constrained, so it's more likely going to get exactly what you're asking for. But in a Python code base that's very small, there's just so much possible, like the solution space is so huge that it's much less likely to get the answer that you want, right? So that's, I think vibe coding and model coding performance depends a lot on kind of the maturity of the code base, the size of the code base, the language that you're using, and so on. Okay. Let's copy the exact file name here just so it doesn't get confused. God, I hate the way that Windows copies. Implement the to-dos in... Okay, so now we have a more limited context, so it should solve the needle in the haystack that all three of them failed. And we have the exact file name, so it should be a little bit better. So let's give it to all three of these boys. Or I don't know if they're boys, right? They're kind of asexual. And then let's also give it to Gemini. See what we get. All right. Okay, so immediately they came out thinking. Let's see. Task involves getting extrinsics. This is like bundle adjustment. Okay, that's correct. Bundle adjustment is thinking in the right dimension, right? Bundle adjustment is the correct terminology here. Okay. Compute the relative transport to refine the extrinsics. That's correct. Ensuring the code meets minimal functionality without necessarily guaranteeing. Okay, so it's understanding that you're not going to get the perfect answer here, right? So this type of problem where you're trying to calculate the camera extrinsics, right? It's not. It's an optimization problem, right? It's like you're trying to find a solution that minimizes the error, right? So there's going to be error with the camera relative position to the April tag, right? So even though this April tag allows you to get the relative position of the camera to that April tag, because there's camera intrinsics, right? There's this kind of distortion to the camera. The intrinsic parameters are not necessarily 100% correct. the position of this April tag, right? Even though I put it and I know exactly where it is and I kind of tried to put it exactly in this position in real life, there's some error there. So there's a lot of little tiny errors. That means that you're not going to get one single solution to this. It's a optimization problem where you're just going to find like a local minima, right? So that's also what makes this a little bit harder. All right, Gemini 2.5 Pro Elegant implements an iterative optimization process. That's usually how this is solved, right? So for example, one great solution to this was actually in the previous stream that I did. So the previous stream, I think 2 weeks ago, called Feast, we were reviewing a bunch of robotics papers, and one of the papers that we reviewed was this one here that publishes this XM algorithm, which basically does this, right? So I'm not expecting them to know this exact algorithm, right? This would be a snipe and a half if they're like, hey, I'm going to go find a optimized C++ implementation of this exact global bundle adjustment problem and then provide it in this thing. No, it's like because I'm doing it in Python, it's like they're unlikely to search that. I don't think they're also searching for existing solutions. There's enough kind of like stuff in there to just go into pure Python, and you can see, let's see what it's using here. It's using JAX. Okay, that's good. JAX is already a dependency for this project, so it decided, okay, I could just do this in JAX. JAX is a pretty good solution for kind of generic optimization problems like this, especially if you're going to be doing iterative optimization process, right? So that's actually pretty clever. So Gemini decided that, hey, JAX is already a dependency for this project. I'm going to just use that and then basically create this optimization process and then run it a bunch of times. So you can see here. Let's actually see what it's doing. Let's kind of read a little bit closer here. So actually, the better way to do this is just to copy this and then paste it in here. So let's close out of that. Let's go into our, not in here, in here. And then we're going to Control A, paste. And the reason we do that is because then we get the diff. So you see here in IDEs, you get these little lines here. These lines basically tell you what changed. So I know that this is the same, but this here changed. So you see how now there's an extra quarg called num iterations 10. So it added copy, it added collections, it added the JAX dependencies, goes through each of the images, finds the correct camera intrinsics, feeds that into the track tags, saves the detection image. Okay, gets the initial relative pose, convert the returned world poses back to camera relative pose. So it's creating an SE3, which is basically a rotation and a translation. So here's the rotation, right? So it's converting the quaternion for the camera into an SO3 rotation, and then it's taking the camera position and then using that rotation and translation to create this SE3 object, which becomes the initial camera transform. And that's going to be what you kind of start from, and then you're going to have one of those for each of the cameras, then you're going to iterate your way to a final one. Detected tags creates this dictionary. Deep copies the original cam. Iterates from, okay. Where's the loss function? Average pose, average tag world poses, re-estimate camera poses, average camera poses. So where is the actual loop here? Iteratively refined. So the entire loop goes all the way to the bottom here, and it keeps updating this update cams. So I guess this is where the actual money is being made right here, this mean and then the norm. So it's kind of just like an average. I don't know about that. normalized linear interpolation. It's like, dude, you're just literally just dividing by the norm. Okay. I don't know. That's okay. You know, not necessarily amazing, but it's a solid. Let's see this one. O3 Pro is still thinking. Let's see. Let's look at its little thinking trace over here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Averaging tag poses, transforming, utilize dictionary indexing. This is still thinking, still thinking. Okay, Grok 4 ended, and you can see how it didn't give us a lot of trash. So Gemini kind of yapped a little bit before. It said like, oh, here's the blah, 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 blah. Here's a summary, and then here you go. Grok 4, and we noticed this with the riddles earlier in the stream. So whenever we asked it, like, hey, what is the, it like just gives us one-word answers. So I do kind of like that when they're kind of minimalistic, and they're just like, here's exactly what you asked for. Okay, so we're going to copy that. This is interesting. Run. There's a run button here, but there's no way this is going to run because this is uses a bunch of dependencies that it doesn't even have. What happens if it's just going to say, I can't run this? Yeah, no module named Jax. Like, there's no point in having these run buttons because it's like most, like 90% of the time, like whenever people are asking for code here, it's like it's very unlikely that you have all the dependencies, especially for a robotics project like this where you have all these like hardware dependencies and stuff like that. Like there's zero chance that you're ever going to run that. Okay, let's see. Copy pasted. You can see we got the little lines here telling us what it changed. It's also using Jax, so kind of also interesting, right? It decided that, hey, rather than adding OpenCV or some of these other Python modules that have tools that would allow you to do this, it decides to use Jax, which is already a dependency for this project. So that's also good. Both Gemini and Grok 4 decided to do that. I like how it's not changing as much. So one thing you notice is that Gemini was changing a bunch of other crap. You can see here how it's Grok 4 is very minimalistic. You see it just change this, change that, change that. So it just kind of added the minimum stuff here. Could be URDF in the future. That's a good idea. Okay, assume tags current are just a guess. Observe tag cam. T-world cam inverse T-world tag. Optimization loop. Okay, so here's a little interesting little tidbit here. So Grok 4 decided to put these here. So you see these things here, these numbers buried inside a function like this is not a good design pattern, right? So like if you have numbers like this inside a function, you kind of want to put them as quarks up here, right? So that the person who reads this code is aware that, hey, these are numbers that are kind of arbitrary and you should be able to pick those. So I kind of prefer how Gemini 2.5 Pro put the number of iterations as a quark versus Grok just like buried it inside here. It's just no bueno. All right, we're going to have to actually run this to actually see where we're at. So let's do this. Let's SSH into our robot that is connected to these cameras. Go into here, source our environment script. We're going to have to install the camera dependencies. I think it's viz bot dev gen and also image. So we're going to install all of those, and then let's also do the environment file, which contains all the camera passwords, and then we're going to UV run the tatbot tag scan module, and we're going to use debug logging. So this is going to actually collect a no module. We need to install the April tag UV pip install tag. Anyone has the Tatbot repo? You can find the Tatbot repo on my GitHub. So if you just go to my GitHub, it's the first pin repo. So these are different repos that I've worked on. I even have some super old school stuff. Look at this. This is a project that I did 8 years ago where I trained little convnets. So these were little convnets that were consuming a very cute 128 by 128 image. And then this is like old school deep learning here, right? Little fully connected. And then the output is literally just WSAD. And it's I used evolution. So basically I had different model architectures for these little convnets, and then I had them play each other. So basically you spawn on an island, two pirates spawn on an island, and this was made in Unity, and then they basically compete, and the first one to touch the treasure wins, right? And then I would basically mutate them and then have them compete again, and then mutate the winners and then compete, and then mutate the winners and then compete, and then mutate the winners and then compete. And you can see here these are the different winners, but I don't know, I kind of went in a rabbit hole there. But anyways, these are my pinned repos, and this is Tapbot. So if you actually want the Tapbot repo, here it is. This little project I'm working on, I have all kinds of official stuff now. Look at this. I have a TikTok. I have an Instagram. See? Where I post all my Tapbot content. I'm trying to get all the kids, you know, to love robot tattoos. Here's the most recent hardware version of Tapbot. You can see here, this is the RealSense, right? So you can see the RealSense is on this kind of like flexi mount, which is why we need to calculate the extrinsic positions of the RealSense, because it changes. And that's always like almost like a ideological battle in robotics, right? Calculating camera extrinsics can get really annoying. So a lot of times what roboticists do is that the camera is like fixed, right? There's something that's like holding it in a very specific position so that it never moves. But the problem with that is that, hey, if I'm tattooing things, like I'm going to be tattooing different body parts, like the positioning of the camera relative to the body part is going to change depending on the body part. Therefore, for Tapbot, I decided to go with this kind of gooseneck solution and then just kind of calculate the extrinsics every time. Okay. Line 32 here. This is just okay, I know what happened here. So the issue here is that this is, well, actually, the first issue is that this is not running the code that we want. We have to contribute this to GitHub first. So let's actually delete that. We're going to commit this because we're actually on a different computer right now, right? And we're going to have to git pull. And then we're going to have to run it. So, okay. There it is. It's connecting to all the cameras. It's reading images from all the cameras. So it's creating this object right here. Right? So you can see this is actually live. Let's see if you can see me. I think this camera has a view of me. No, this one here. Yeah, there I am. You see me? There it is. There's some tattoos I was working on yesterday. This is fake skin, so it like tattoos this like fake skin. You can see there are the two RealSense cameras on the flexi things. All right, let's see where this fails. Okay, so this is running the Grok code right now. It's reading the images. Dict object has no attribute RealSenses. So the problem here is that this right here is also a dictionary. It's like this. It's a little bit unfortunate, but let's do RealSenses. Let's make sure there's nowhere else where it does that. Yeah, it's right here. Like that. Actually, these are, that might not be like that, but we'll see. See if that solves it. Okay, while that's going, let's look at O3 solution here. Okay, so O3. Self-contained replacement that removes every outstanding to-do, adds a minimal but robust rigid registration routine using Umeyama? The fuck is this? Umeyama. Umeyama refers to the Umeyama algorithm known as the Kopsch-Umeyama, which is a method for aligning two sets of points by finding the optimal rotation, translation, and scaling. Huh. Calculating the optimal rotation matrix by minimizing root mean squared. Okay, so I mean, it's basically just root mean squared minimization. So it's just a fancy way of describing its algorithm, but kind of clever. Okay, I don't like this. I don't like this crap. You seeing this? Like, O3 loves to do this. It loves to just like put all these weird comments and trash in here, and like, I don't want this, you know? Like, it should be able to identify that in my code base, I don't have any of this crap, any of these types of comments. I don't want that. But it's very opinionated when it comes to its code base, which basically to me means that whenever they're doing reinforcement learning on code for O3, they probably always have this, right? So when you're doing reinforcement learning, which is a big part of the compute now, right? So Grok for compute RL, you guys have probably seen this chart. Yeah, right here. So pre-training compute is basically the internet. And then RL compute is whenever the AI is producing outputs, and then you're filtering through those outputs and then using only the best of those outputs to train the model, right? So RL compute, you're using reasoning traces and using those to push gradients into the model. So whenever I see this type of behavior where O3 Pro is very opinionated about the specific style of comments that it uses in code, what that means to me is that all of the reasoning traces or code that is being pushed into O3 all has this, right? So something that only has kind of pre-training compute, there's so much variety in the comments style that it'll identify the comment style that you're using and then kind of mimic that style, right? Because it's like, oh, I've seen that before. Oh, I can just output code in that style. But the RL has kind of forced this model to just have such a specific style that it's kind of incapable of not producing this style. That's kind of my theory as to why O3 is so specific about this style, and like it doesn't want to do anything other than this style. Okay, let's actually look at this. So here's the rigid umeyama. Let's see if it put the magic numbers in the middle here. Where's the number of iterations? There's no iteration number here? Like, what the fuck? Is Umamaya not an iterative algorithm? Is the Kabsh Umamaya algorithm iterative? Is the Kabsh Umeyama algorithm not iterative? All right, now it's going to spend another 20 minutes thinking about that yes or no question. All right, let's actually go back to extrinsics line 36. Unfortunately, this is still failing on this like dictionary fucking issue here. Okay. And the same thing here. Okay. Still just evaluating Grok's solution. Come on, O3. You can't just take this long to answer questions. Reference cam. No April tags. This is kind of a clever clever little shortcut here, right? So you can see here this it's I don't know, sometimes like you can kind of like this type of inline kind kind of list comprehension type of stuff, right? Where you basically put all of it in line like this. Like, I actually kind of am against these. You know, some people like these because it reduces the number of lines of code, but to me, it just makes it more annoying to read. Like, I kind of prefer the expanded out for loops like that, because whether or not it's expanded or whether or not you're fitting it into one line, it's still slow, right? Like the whole like for loops are slow, so you might as well just have them take up a bunch of space, so you become more aware of the fact that this is slow. Okay. Key error real senses. Okay, this fucking, what is going on here? The cam object should have a real sense. Jesus. We're gonna have to do this, guys. Bop, bop, bop. Am I losing people yet? As soon as this turned into a vibe coding stream, everybody's like, what the hell am I doing watching this? What algorithm are you using here? Where? What is being optimized? No, the classical Kopsch algorithm optionally estimates an isotropic scale factor is closed form, not iterative. Yeah, so that's why there's no iteration number here. I don't know much about Kopsch Umeyama, but in general, I feel like a non-iterative algorithm is going to perform worse here. Perform an SVD. This is also not good news, because that's not going to be exact. The algorithm runs in a single pass. Yeah, so for example here, iterative closest point. This is a pretty standard algorithm for aligning point clouds. And it uses the Umeyama algorithm, but inside a loop, right? So inside, there's an inner loop that's constantly doing this, and then there's an outer loop that is slowly converging. So this would be a better solution. Bundle adjustment may start from a Kopsch estimate and then iterate to minimize reprojection error jointly across many cameras and tags. Yeah. This is kind of more what I wanted, right? I don't like this like one shot. Like, that's not going to be as accurate as kind of something iterative like Gemini and Grok suggested. The algorithm implemented is an iterative alternating optimization for multi-cameras. It alternates between estimating the world poses of the tags. This process repeats based on a threshold for the maximum change in camera positions. To prevent drift, the poses are anchored by normalizing relative to a reference camera. I don't like that. Right. Really, the highest, right, if you think about the confidence, right, so the confidence of the camera position, there's the initial position of all these different objects. There's the initial position of these April tags, and then there's the initial position of each of these cameras. The initial position of the April tags is a much more high confident, right, like because I personally know exactly where these are, right, I like align them to this bar specifically. So this is a much more, there's a different confidence for those initial things. So I don't like this idea of using a camera as one of the starting kind of anchor position. What is being optimized are the camera extrinsics. Yeah, that's fine. Minimizes the variance in the estimated world positions. Okay. Okay, this is taking images. Okay, we should get to our breakpoint soon. I don't know why this is taking so long. Oh, we're in the breakpoint, but because we have debug logging on. Oh my God. All right. So you see here, the problem is that in our scan, whenever we do this debug logging, right, we set the Robot, which is the kind of framework that we're using to create these camera objects and store images. The way that Robot does this is it actually creates, I think, threads, or it might even do separate processes directly in order to run these camera. So we need to do this, because or else we're just going to get spammed with this crap. Bam. Hitlerbot is the best LLM now. I don't know if it's Hitlerbot, dude. I feel like that's overblown, you know? Like, do we actually think that Grok 3 is like a Nazi bot? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think anybody's a Nazi in 2025. Like, you know, that's like old school. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's kind of like, here's kind of an analogy that I was thinking of. It's like people will say, oh, that person is a barbarian, right? But nobody is a barbarian in 2025. Barbarian is like a specific type of person that existed in like 1000 AD, you know? So like whenever someone says, hey, that person is a barbarian, you know, in a literal interpretation of that, they're incorrect, because no, that person is not part of a Visigoth Germanic tribe that is like going around and like warring and like attacking, right? So I find it's a similar kind of thing with this like Hitler Nazi kind of like, no, I don't think that anybody in 2025 is actually has the same kind of ideology and opinions as someone who like lived in like 1930s Germany, right? Like that just not, people just don't have that type of mentality anymore, the same way that anybody in 2025 isn't going to have the same mentality as like a Visigoth German barbarian. So yeah, I think more, to me, what people are kind of arguing over is kind of this idea of like, are you allowed to say things that are kind of sketchy? You know, like should AIs be able to kind of say sketchy, potentially offensive stuff? Or should they kind of know better and not say that? And I don't know. It's a difficult kind of, it's almost like an ideological kind of question of like, as you get more intelligent, do you become more aware of how speech impacts other people, and thus you become kind of more constrained, you know? Or as you become more intelligent, you kind of care less about that and you become more loose. And it's almost like you have both examples perfectly in the zeitgeist, right? You have the Sam Altman and then you have the Elon, right? And someone like Sam, it's like he's very aware of everything that he's saying, and everything that he says is going through like multiple levels of filter in his mind, so that everything that comes out of Sam Altman's mouth is like perfectly clean, is not going to offend anybody, and paints him in the best possible light, you know, versus someone like Elon. They're kind of more raw. He's just kind of saying whatever is in his mind. And what that means is that 10% of the time, he's going to say something that either makes him look stupid, or he's going to say something that offends some random group of people, or he's going to say something that maybe even causes some external harm in some other world because of it, like changes some other person's thing, blah, 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 right? Because things you say can impact the outside world. So those two sides, right? It's like there's two ideologies there, and one side, each side hates the other side, right? Like the Elon side hates the kind of Sam Altman kind of like super polished, everyone kind of becomes this kind of like saying only the things, and you kind of keep restricting yourself, kind of bottling yourself up. They kind of see it as kind of like that, right? You're bottling yourself up. It's like anti-free speech. Like you should be able to say what you want. And that's their kind of argument. On the other side, the kind of more Sam Altman kind of like, I would say Bay Area kind of mentality and ideology is like, hey, you need to be more aware of how the things that you say are impacting the world around you, and therefore you should kind of not just say random shit and whatever comes to your mind. Right? I feel like I'm kind of in the middle. I honestly think there's positives and negatives to both of those, but unfortunately, it's like all of us in the middle are kind of being forced to pick a side. Right? It's like neither side likes the middle, right? There was a point where this side hates that side, but they tolerate the middle, and then the other side hates the other side, but they tolerate the middle. And I feel like we're starting to get to the point where both sides, not only do they hate the other side, but they do not tolerate the people in the middle because they see that lack of allegiance or lack of decision as effectively like a, hey, if you're not with me, then you're against me. And I think that's just very dangerous, right? This kind of like forcing people to pick a side. It's just like, dude, I don't want to pick a side. I think both sides. The middle is like 1% of the population and everyone hates us. Who's us? I don't think the middle is like 1%. I think the silent majority is in the middle. Like, I don't think you should get banned because you make a joke about Hitler, right? Obviously, making a joke about Hitler, like, yeah, there's repercussions. It's gonna like trigger PTSD in people that have dealt with kind of things like that before. Maybe you shouldn't have made that joke, but I also don't feel like you shouldn't be allowed to make that joke. You know what I'm saying? But I also feel like it's in bad taste to make that joke. So it's like I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I wouldn't do that. But Elon is not random. Elon is manipulative, goal-oriented. I don't think he's that manipulative. Right? Like, just think about the whole falling out that he had with the president. Right? There was many tweets there in that falling out that was basically him shooting himself in the foot. Right? Like, he put himself at so much risk kind of supporting the kind of not necessarily loved president, and then threw that all away just to put out like these specifically the Epstein tweet, right? Like, that just seems like random to me. That seems like an impulse, like, I'm just going to say what's in my head, this like kind of tweet, not like a I'm being manipulative and goal oriented kind of thing, right? I feel like Sam Altman would never fucking do that, you know? It's a tactical fake breakup. Yeah, I've heard this argument before where people are saying like, yeah, he's not being an idiot. It's all secretly like a 500 IQ chess move, right? Like, I've heard the theory that he, by saying that, he's going to get they're going to impeach the president, and then the vice president, who's kind of more with Elon, kind of gets like, there's some kind of like 500 IQ kind of like reasoning there, but I just don't think he's thinking that deeply. I think he's just kind of impulsively tweeting what's in his mind, right? I'd hesitate to use Grok as an agent. Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, right? Is that if you are just going to say whatever the fuck is in your mind, right? And if you kind of have this more kind of like free speech kind of ethos where it's like, hey, I'm going to say whatever I want to say, well, then don't be surprised when you say something that's offensive, and then the people who are offended by that no longer want to do stuff with you, right? That's the reality, right? You kind of, so kind of the same way that whenever X opened up and they allowed kind of a bunch of people to say a bunch of weird, offensive stuff, advertisers didn't want to necessarily advertise anymore because they're like, hey, we don't want to be associated with this. Right? That's the reality of the situation. And I feel like that's totally fine, right? I think it's the decision of people like, hey, if you want to use AI in your product and you don't want the AI to have a non-zero chance of saying some random sketchy offensive stuff, then you should be able to make that choice. Yeah, and you should be able to choose the AI that is a little bit more aware of what it's saying, you know? And I think that's totally fine. I don't know. I don't like talking about politics, unfortunately. Where are we at? This is still fucked. I thought we solved this. I thought we... Let's run it without the debug. It's like I can just feel the appeal of talking about politics for content creation just because everybody, like, look at this. As soon as I started talking about Elon and politics, like, the amount of comments, like, 10x'd. You know, it's like, that's all people want to talk about now. Open source is the only realistic future. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you, Maple. I just don't like having to go to kind of these, like, you know, like, even just the experience here, like, all these, like, secret system prompts that you're not aware of, right? All these reasoning chains, all these ensembles, these workflows where there's, like, kind of not just one system prompt, but there's, like, kind of, like, summary workflows where they're like, hey, summarize this reasoning chain, make sure to not say these things and make sure to say these things. It's like, I want an AI where I can decide that, right? I can decide what the system prompt is. I decide what's allowed, what's not allowed, right? I don't want somebody else to make that decision for me. But unfortunately, that's kind of where we're going, where it's like all the system prompts, all the kind of what is the AI can output is just done for you. Okay, we're finally here. Let's see what this CAMS object is. You see, it's because, you see, look at this, cams.keys. So the keys for this cam object are the cams themselves. So it's the cam names. So if we go to 37 here, it's like this. It's like that. You don't actually need this part here. Which means these don't actually need to be here either. It means these don't need to be here either. Might not even need this anymore, just like that. Simplify the code base. Ooh. Where are we at? Like this. How is XAI moving so fast? Because they have a huge amount of GPUs. They basically just have, I think they have like the largest cluster. Let's actually see. What is the size of the GPU clusters available to each of the frontier model companies? They just have a ton of GPUs. The Kapsch Umayama algorithm. Let's ask these, all of them, see if there's any difference. Companies can self-host big distributed models given proper support and regulations, I think. Yeah, I just wonder, like, I don't know where the self-hosting goes, right? Because you can think about what happened, like, for example, think about the world before AWS. before AWS, if you had some kind of a internet-based product, you had to basically hire people that would build the servers for you and maintain the servers for you, and then you had to figure out how to, okay, now I have to, this is part of my CapEx, and there's a depreciation cost, and I'm going to have to buy new servers, and then I'm going to have to, like, there's a lot of shit there that, you know, you don't want to deal with if you're just making an internet company for dog food, you know? So AWS kind of abstracting that away from you and saying, hey, we'll deal with all this nonsense and data center cooling and all this crap, and then you can focus on the part that matters, right? So I kind of see AI is going the same way too, right? Where most companies that are going to do something in AI, they don't want to go down to the level of like the actual data center and even the hosting, right? But I don't know. I guess I'm making an argument for why is OpenAI getting into data center stuff. But I guess they're not really getting into data center stuff. It's like they're kind of using third parties to do that, you know? I guess XAI is kind of like building a lot of its own stuff, but not even, right? Because then they're using NVIDIA's data center stuff. Let's see. Meta AI, 600,000 H100s. XAI has 100,000 H100s. OpenAI has 100,000. This is in the Starbase or whatever it's called, Star. Did you guys notice that, by the way? Like, something kind of creepy. Starbase or Star Portal or something like a Portal Star. What the fuck was that cluster called? Stargate. Yeah, so Stargate cluster is right here in Abilene. And then Elon has Starbase, which is here. So the two kind of people who are fighting for the future of AI are both building a star-themed city in Texas, right? You have Stargate for Sam Altman and his loyalists here, and then you have Starbase for Elon and his loyalist here. I just find the geography of that kind of interesting. I mean, it has to do with the fact that Texas has pretty loose regulations and they have a lot of free energy because basically this entire side of Texas is like produces a ton of oil, so they have like natural gas that just kind of like right now they just burn it. So there's a lot, energy prices are cheap in Texas. And then I think for Starbase, the reason they have it here is because they basically want something that's close to the equator to launch, right? So that's also why the NASA launch happens here, you know, also here, right? So all the like space and rocket stuff is generally kind of in the southern parts of the U.S. But I don't know, like think about that. The two kind of stars are right here, Stargate and Starbase. Stargate was in Virginia? What? I thought Stargate was in Abilene. Yeah, I think it's in Abilene, Texas. What do I think about Cerebras? Cerebras. Oh, this is like a chip company. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think NVIDIA is very advanced in this. I think because NVIDIA is worth a shit ton of money, you know, you're going to have a bunch of these kind of like companies that offer something close to it, but I don't know. I don't really have any personal take on this, but big ass chip. Yeah, everybody has chips now. You have Cerebras, you have Grok. I think Even Grok, not the Grok model, but the Grok chip, this one. Yeah. And there's also the TPUs, which are pretty good as well. Those are more legit. I have more trust in the TPUs than these Grok chips and the Cerebrus chips. And then if you really want to get weird, there's the Extropic chip. Yeah, these guys. I almost have more faith in this, right? This to me is like an all or nothing, right? Like this is either just going to completely fail and basically like we're never going to hear about these guys again, or they're going to completely disrupt everybody, right? So I don't know. I feel like if you're doing deep tech, you might as well just go all the way, right? Like why just do a deep tech play where you're just kind of copying what somebody else already has, right? Like if you're going to go deep tech, just go all the way and try to do something that's just so fucking weird that if you actually get it done, you're going to be the only person that does it, right? It's the whole like 0 to 1 kind of mentality. That's kind of what I'm doing with Tapbot, right? It's like, this is fucking hard, you know? Like people are talking about picking up like an Apple or sorting packages. Like the like millimeter level precision that you need for like tattooing is just, it's a difficult problem. And the fact that you're doing it on human skin, it's even harder, you know? But I know that if I do it, you know, it's not a whole lot of competition. RealSense camera object has no attribute extrinsics. That's false. Fuck, I'm already over the 2 hour. Kimi K2 1,832,000,000 MOE. Let's see it. Kimi K2 1T-A32B MOE. $400K, $100K. Tranium B2s, $600K. Yeah, I mean, like, these numbers are just not very well known, you know, because, like, Google uses the TPUs, so, like, are you doing it based on flops, right? And then even then, flops is kind of, like, not necessarily going to tell you the whole story because a lot of the Google data centers are kind of more spread out, so you have to kind of account for the communication, you know, in between those, right? Versus like the XAI supercluster, all of those 100,000 GPUs are in the same center, and they're all kind of wired together with the latest kind of NVLink, NVIDIA kind of networking magic. So like the interconnectivity and the speed of communication between all the nodes in that particular computational graph is very, very strong, you know, versus like a lot of these, like, oh, Anthropic has hundreds of thousands of Trainium 2 chips. It's like, yeah, but they're like, you know, like fucking like random spot instances, and like one's over here and one's over there, and there's like 4 different data centers. So it's like a little bit more annoying to train like something big on that. But then again, maybe it doesn't even matter, right? Maybe like kind of it, I bring these guys up all the time, but Synthesis AI or something like that. The decentralized AI company, I forget exactly what it's called, but they're collecting a bunch of reinforcement learning experience across a bunch of distributed computers. So maybe it doesn't matter as much if it's all co-located, right? So whenever we were in the pre-training kind of scaling curve, right, having all the GPUs in the same place was really important, right? Because whenever you're pre-training, it's like you're just feeding the same internet-style data set into the neural net over and over and over again, right? So whenever we were kind of on the pre-training scale, a part of the AI kind of singularity curve, having all of them in the same place mattered a lot. But I think that now, as you're moving into a reinforcement learning world, you know, and you're kind of half of the training process is just generating reasoning, right? You're performing inference to generate a bunch of things and then using RL to push those back. I think that kind of makes it less optimal to have all. It's still better to have all your GPUs in one place, but it's not as bad to have them more spread out. So depending on what the relative ratio of RL compute to like pre-training compute is, which it seems like we're moving to a world where it's going to be mostly RL compute, then maybe having like one giant data center like XAI has is going to be less important, but I don't know. It's on Hugging Face under Moonshot AI. Hugging Face, Moonshot AI. Let's see. Kimmy K2 released 13 minutes ago. What is this? Paperlink coming soon. State-of-the-art mixture of experts with 32 billion activated parameters and 1 trillion total parameters. So, train with the muon optimizer. They should have used the actual letter, right? It's so much cooler. Right? Whenever people write it with the little mu sign, I feel like it's cooler. Yeah, like this. Let's see. Who are these people? Moonshot AI. God. Moonshot AI funding rounds. Technode. Funding round Series B. Trying to verify that I'm not a bot. So this is a bunch of Chinese companies. A bunch of Chinese investors. Finance. Series B. Angel round. Yeah, so, okay. Chinese company. Live code bench, sweet bench. So all of these are basically like agent benchmarks, right? They're comparing to Claude 4 Sonnet, Deepseek v3. These are solid comparisons. GPT 4.1 is kind of like a meme. A lot of times in these like kind of benchmarks like this, it's like they'll compare to like kind of trash models just to make it look good, right? Like they'll put like Llama 3 in there, you know? But okay, they do have Claude 4 in there. Kind of getting stomped a little bit on that. This all seems pretty standard here. MLA, that's the Deepseek attention. What was the data set? Put Llama 4 in there as well. Yeah, something happened with the Llama 4 model. I mean, I'm kind of sad about the Llama death, you know, to be honest, guys. Like, I thought Llama was great. I thought it was really good to have a open source model that was out there. But unfortunately, I think that Llama's dead, and that I don't know if Meta's going to continue to do open source, you know. We might just see them go completely closed source, you know, since they hired a bunch of people from the Frontier Labs that are already closed source, which would be kind of sad, you know, if we lose Llama. Because if we lose Llama, I guess it kind of depends where the OpenAI open source model goes. If the OpenAI open source model does not hit and people don't use it that much, then we might be fucked, and we might just end up in a world where everything is closed source. So we kind of need another win for open source here, because it could get pretty bad. All right, I'm already like 4 minutes over. We never actually fucking solved this issue here. 9:35. What are these crowns, guys? What the fuck are those crowns? Number 1, number 2. What are the crowns on the chat? Like, what does that even mean? Cumulative points they've earned for engaging with that specific live stream. Oh, okay. So it's basically like how many comments you've made on this specific chat. It's kind of cool. They're just trying to engage you guys with. They're trying to game engagement. Okay, we're here. Cams. Okay, dictionary cams, camera name. It's a real sense camera object. Oh, I know what's going on. See, this is the problem, guys, is that the issue isn't in this file. The issue is actually in my file. So in my scan file, the cam object that I'm creating is not a cam object it's not this cam object, right? So I have my own camera object, but what the extrinsic function is receiving is the robot camera object. So this is not, see, this is the problem with fucking Python, is that this isn't actually doing type checking. Is that this function here, I said, okay, cams should be this cam object from this file here, right? It should be this camera object here. But it's not. It's the robot cam object. So if this was C++, it would have failed and said, hey, actually this function here, it got called with a cam object that isn't the same thing as this. And it would have failed. But Python's just like, I don't give a shit. Sure. It just kept going. And now I have to now it runs into an issue here when it's like, hey, the robot camera object doesn't have an extrinsics property. It's the problem, dude, is that the typing in Python is fucking fake. Can you use type? Yeah, I mean, there's like MyPy too. There's like a bunch of other like crap that I would have to use, but it's like not baked into the Python. That's kind of what I want. It's like Python with the actual baked in typing, not using some kind of other bullshit like third party shit that I have to like run in addition to that. Open Room. What do you think Software 2.0 will become less relevant in the next 2 to 4 years when you compare it to Software 3.0? Yeah, I still think that having knowledge, like programming doesn't just teach you syntax. So programming is not just about the syntax. I think syntax is not super important, like, which has always been the case, that over time the programming languages have changed, so the syntax changes, but what doesn't change is kind of the computational thinking, right? Like if you think about like just basic data types and basic kind of abstractions like memories and like basic algorithms in terms of like, okay, like for loops are pretty slow, like how do you do things in parallel, right? Like all of those basic concepts I think are still going to be useful. And as we move into like a Software 3.0 world where things are abstracted away from you, I feel like having a knowledge of that is still somewhat useful. Maybe try Mojo. Yeah, I've heard of Mojo. I actually recommend the Mojo Latner. He had a YouTube interview recently where he talks about it. It sounds pretty good based on the interviews, but like, I don't know. I don't think it's... We'll see. We'll see if it survives. Yeah, I don't think it's production ready. It's definitely still kind of like a demo. What about training your own neural network, the Software 2.0? Software 2.0 concepts are also important. So I would say Software 2.0 concepts are concepts like having a data set, right? The difference between supervised learning and self-supervised learning, right? Like what is a loss function? Things like that. That's more Software 2.0 knowledge, right? Sampling. Then you have software 3.0 knowledge. I think if you understand the high-level concepts for software 1.0, software 2.0, and software 3.0, that's all going to be useful. But useful here just means that you're, I guess, more capable of achieving what you want. But these models are going to be so powerful that they can kind of help you through that, I guess. I don't know. It's a terrible answer. I'm kind of tired. I'm 2 hours and 15 minutes in. I think I might just call it here, guys. I don't think we ever finished this crap here. I guess we finished it. Let me see. Let me make a decision here. Which one did I think was better? I kind of like the Grok solution the better, to be honest. Even though we never got it to work, this seemed like kind of what I wanted. I wanted a iterative optimization process that minimally changes the scaffolding that I gave it, right? I think the Gemini one might have been better. We never actually tested it, so we don't know whether the Gemini one or the Grok one was better. And O3 Pro gave us a single, like it wasn't even iterative. It was like this weird, what was it? Capsch Umeyama algorithm, one shot. And it also kind of completely changed the framework that we gave it, right? It kind of added a bunch of extra comments, changed the stuff, changed all these stuff. So I don't know. I kind of like the Grok 4 answer the most, but it's not like I went super deep. Where we did go super deep is the first part of this stream. So if you missed it, the first part of the stream was quite fun. We basically asked these AIs to solve each other's riddles. So come up with a very short riddle that you think you can solve and no other AI can solve. And they all came up with their own little riddles. And interestingly, they came up with some pretty cool stuff. Grok 4 and O3 Pro. O3 Pro decided to do a riddle that was basically knowing something in its secret system prompt, which was 500 IQ move. Nobody else got it. Grok 4 decided to do something with the X API. We're using the latest X data, so that was pretty clever too, but it failed on its own riddle, which was kind of like confusing. And then we actually asked the different AIs to say who won based on this stuff, and we kind of rediscovered that AIs are kind of, they love themselves, right? They're not just sycophantic to you, they're kind of like, they're in love with themselves a little bit. So Grok 4 said Grok 4 is the best. O3 Pro said O3 Pro is the best, which was kind of clever or interesting. But yeah, guys, that was the stream. What is my final take? I feel like Grok 4 is about O3 Pro. Maybe it's a little bit like it's nicer that it doesn't think as long. I kind of like the most annoying thing about O3 Pro is that it just thinks too long. But yeah, I would say it's about on par with the Frontier right now, but excited to see what the OpenAI open source model is. And also I've heard that the Gemini 3 is coming out, so that one should be pretty strong. You know, Google has a lot of money. They have a lot of TPUs. They have really good technical leadership. You know, Demis is a absolute beast. So we'll see where Gemini 3 is. Thanks for the stream. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Hope it was entertaining or maybe a little bit educational. Why is nobody reproducing the Alpha Evolve? Because it's just too much money. You know, Alpha Evolve is like a huge amount of computation and money for like a very niche application that is very difficult to monetize. That's why nobody else is focusing on it. But yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Jigar, Maple, ZZZ, Open Room, XYZ, Every Dream. Who else? Let me scroll up here. Max, Nali, DM 204-375, Khalil, Loic, 87GN, Kurt, LD Drum 20, Mark B, Jagar. Thanks everybody for hanging out. Hope you guys had a good time and have a good weekend. Let's blow this horn to end it.